Hi, Mr. Heslop here, going through the Year 9 end of year exam. For the first question, we must show our working to find it. It says work out a possible pair of values for x and y. There are many different possible pairs here. The first thing you know is that x multiplied by y minus 4 over 5 must equal minus 2. That's what you've been told in the question. So if we multiply both sides by 5, that means x multiplied by y minus 4 must equal minus 10. And then all you're looking for now is a combination of numbers which multiply together to give minus 10. Lots of different answers here. One combination is minus 5 times 2. That equals minus 10. So for that to work, x must be minus 5 and y minus 4 must be 2. So if y minus 4 is 2, y is 6. That is one combination that works. But as I say, any combination where x multiplied by y minus 4 is minus 10 works there. Next question. Again, just a substitution one. You did have a calculator here, so you could have subbed it into your calculator. But it's good to be able to do questions like this without your calculator as well. W equals 4, t is negative 1, and we've got to work out w minus t cubed. So all we're doing is 4 subtract negative 1 all cubed. Remember, 4 subtract negative 1 is the same as 4 add 1. So that means what we're doing is 5 cubed. 4 add 1 is 5. And then we're cubing at brackets first, and then the indices. 5 cubed is 5 times 5 times 5. It's 125. Question 3, a couple of equations to do. On part A, there was a mark for correctly expanding the brackets. So even if you couldn't solve the equation, you should be able to expand the brackets. So the equation becomes 2x minus 3 equals 4 times x, 4x, minus 4 times 5, minus 20. So we've got unknowns on both sides. What I like to do is get all the x's onto the same side first. So to do that, I could subtract 4x on both sides, but to avoid working with negatives, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So that means 2x subtract 2x is 0. This means we've got negative 3 on the left. On the right, 4x minus 2x is 2x. And then we've still got the minus 20. So now, to make sure the x's are on one side and all the constants are on the other side, I'm going to add 20 to both sides. Negative 3 add 20 is 17. 2x subtract 20 add 20 is simply 2x. That's why we added 20 to both sides. For 2x is 17. You've got 2 marks at this stage, and you've got to divide by 2. So 8.5 equals x. That gets you your 3 marks. Part B, most people did it mainly right, but didn't quite get both marks. 2x squared equals 50. If 2x squared equals 50, then that means x squared must be 50 divided by 2. So x squared must be 25. Now the square root of 25, most of your life you would know that as 5, but actually there were 2 numbers that when multiplied by themselves give 25. And that is 5 and negative 5. And that's the same for any square number. The square root of 16 is 4 and negative 4. Remember, negatives multiplied by a negative gives a positive. So it's 5 and minus 5. 2 answers you could have there. Or 5 or minus 5, 5 and minus 5. So if where you put it, you would have got 2 marks on part B. Number 4 looks like a probability question, but it's not actually asking you to work out any probabilities. It's just asking you to more of a problem-solving wordy problem. So, key thing to realise here, originally there's blue and green counters in the bag and red, and there were 41 counters originally. And then some red counters are added. And when those counters are added, we end up with 52 counters in the bag. And the number of red counters when that happens doubles. So that means what's 52 minus 41 is 11. So adding 11 counters doubled the amount of red counters. So there are 52 counters, Adding 11 meant we doubled the amount we had of red counters. So the amount of red counters we got now is 22. So if we've got 52 in total, 22 of them are red, that means 30 of them must be blue or green. And I call them B and G. 30, blue add green equals 30. And then what other information have we got? There are 4 times as many blue counters as green counters. So the thing we're trying to find is green, so I'll leave that as G. And there are 4 times as many blue, so that means blue equals 4G. 4 lots of G is the same as blue. So 30 equals 4G plus G. So 30 equals 5G. There are 6 green counters. And does that make sense? 6 green counters. Add 22 red counters, that gives 28. And then blue, there were 4 times as many, 4 times green is blue, so that's 24. So 30, add 22, 6, add 22, add 24, does equal 52. So it makes sense. 5, you allow the calculator on this one. A few different ways you can do this. The key thing is that a distance between towns will be given in kilometres, but on the map you want to be talking about centimetres really. So you don't need to try not to give you answers in kilometres, but even though it didn't ask for units, give it to a sensible units. So 3.6 kilometres. What I'm going to do, this wasn't the only way to do it, but I'm going to convert it into centimetres. So 3.6 kilometres, that's going to equal 3,600 metres. So I've multiplied that by 1,000, because there are 1,000 metres in a kilometre. And there are 100 centimetres in a metre, so if I multiply that by 100, I get 360,000 centimetres. So, 360,000 centimetres is the distance between the 2 towns. The map has a scale factor of 1 to 24,000. So that means the distance on the map is 24,000 times smaller than the real distance. So that means the map distance is 360,000 divided by 24,000. And that gives 15 centimetres. 0.15 metres would have also been an acceptable answer. But make sure you gave units. Lots of numbers such as 15, 0.15, but no units given. When you're asked to give a distance, give the units or the distance is meaningless. 6. A cylinder is a circular prism, one way of looking at it. To find the volume of it, we find the area of the cross section, and then we multiply that by the height or the length. So the area of the cross section is a circular cross section because it's a cylinder. So the area of the cross section is pi times r squared, which is pi times 6 squared. That's our blue area. And I'm going to times that by the length, which is 15. And that gives us the volume, which is 1696.5 centimetres cubed. On to number 7, a ratio question, but a ratio question which involves more work than a lot of ratio questions. Got quite a few bits of working out to do. So you've got 3 girls, Amy, Beth and Chloe, and eventually we've got to work out the ratio of Beth's share to Chloe's share. So first of all, we know the ratio of Amy to Chloe is 3 to 2. And we know that Amy's got 270. So if Amy's got 270, that's 3 multiplied by 90. So therefore, Chloe must have 2 multiplied by 90. It's £180. And between them, they get £660. So if Amy's got £270 and Chloe's got £180, then Beth has 660 minus 270 minus 180 pounds. Which, if you work that out, comes to 210 pounds. And if you add up 210, 180 and 270, you will get 660. And that means the ratio of Beth's share to Chloe's share, the thing we're trying to work out, is going to be 210 to the amount Chloe had, which is 180. That's the unsimplified version. We can divide both sides by 30. And the simplified version of the ratio is 7 to 6. And that is our final answer. Number 8, linear inequality question. Solve them the same way you do equations, but just remember you've got an inequality sign in the middle instead of an equal sign. So here, 7 is greater than 2n minus 3. Just like if the equation was 7 equals 2n minus 3, we're going to add 3 to both sides, which means we get 10 is greater than 2n. Divide both sides by 2, which means 5 is greater than n. And that is the answer, or n is less than 5. Both acceptable ways to leave that answer. Number 9, rounded to significant figures. Remember, significant figures are different to decimal points. The first significant figure is the first non-zero digit. So we've got 0.0. We haven't had a significant figure yet. Then that means the first significant figure is 4, and the second significant figure is 1. But because the 1's got a 7 next to it, it rounds up to a 2. So therefore, the two significant figures, it's 0.042. And then B, you obviously had a calculator, but you were asked to use approximations to estimate. You couldn't just put the answer into your calculator. You're asked to estimate, and you can be penalised for being too accurate on estimation questions. So what you've got to do is round every single number in the question to one significant figure, and then work it out. So 8,014, round that to 8,000. 51.1, round that to 50. 0.408, lots of people round that to 0.5, but to one significant figure it's actually 0.4. So that's what we've got. 50 times 0.4, remember 0.4 will be 2/5 as a fraction. So 50 times 0.4 is 2/5 of 50, which is 20. We're left with 8,000 divided by 20 square rooted. 8,000 divided by 20 is 400. And the square root of 400 is 20. Or, as we found earlier, actually minus 20. But this question didn't actually require you to put minus 20. But if you did, well done. Number 10, right angle triangle. Lots of people were right in SOHCAHTOA because they saw a right angle triangle. But SOHCAHTOA is only involved if it's a right angle triangle and there's an angle involved in some way. If you've just got two sides and you're trying to find the third side, then you use Pythagoras. And we know from Pythagoras that the square of the shorter sides, when added together, gives the square of the hypotenuse. That means x squared plus 5 squared equals 10 squared. Because the hypotenuse is always opposite the right angle, which is 10. So that means x squared must equal 10 squared minus 5 squared. So x squared is 75, which means x is the square root of 75, which is 8.66 to 2 decimal places, 8.66 centimeters. Number 12, a different type of simultaneous equation to what you're normally used to. It's one where the best way to do it is probably substitution. You can do it by elimination, but I would recommend doing substitution here. So because we know that y equals 3x minus 11, we can substitute that into the first equation. So instead of writing 5x plus y, we can write 5x plus 3x minus 11 because we know that 3x minus 11 is what y is. Yep. So 5x plus y equals 13, so therefore 5x plus 3x minus 11 must equal 13. So that means 8x minus 11 is 13. Add the 11 to both sides, we get 8x equals 24. Divide both sides by 8, and we get x equals 3. And then to find out what y is, we substitute that into one of the equations. And the easier equation is the second one. So instead of writing y equals 3x minus 11, I'm going to write y equals 3 times 3 minus 11, because x is 3. So if y is 3 times 3 minus 11, y is 9 minus 11, which is 2. So our answer to the simultaneous equation is x is 3 and y is 2. Number 12 was an enlargement question, but we're enlarging by a fractional scale factor, which makes it more difficult. The centre of enlargement, it says, is 1, 7. So centre of enlargement is here. And if you enlarge it by a scale factor of a half, that means every point on the trapezium must be half as far away from the centre of enlargement as it is at the beginning. So if I pick, say, this point here, then originally it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to the right, and 1, 2, 3, 4 down. So I'm going to half that and go 3 to the right and 2 down. So it's going to end up there. And then you can do the same with all the other points, or you can draw lines and see where on those lines the points will fall. Or you can at this point just know that because the scale factors are half, every side is going to be half as big. So that means the side at the top, instead of being 2 squares to the right, is just going to be 1. The vertical side, instead of being 2 squares down, there's going to be 1 down. And then the side at the bottom, instead of being 1 square across, is going to be half a square across. And I can just join it up. So we end up with a trapezium half as big and half as far away from the centre of enlargement. And here, a standard form question. Because you had a calculator, you could just type this into your calculator, and if you use the negatives put in correctly, you would have just got the answer. But all we're doing is multiplying by 10 to the power of negative 2, which means that you're getting 100 times smaller, or every digit is moving 2 places to the right. Therefore, the answer is 0.0716. 14, need to make x a subject. This means the final answer needs to be in the form x equals something. That's what make x a subject means. So it's just like solving an equation, but instead of getting a number as an answer, we're going to have a formula. So t equals m plus x over h. That's what we start with. So the first thing I like to do is anything that doesn't have an x in it, get to the other side. So we've got this x over h. That's where x is occupied at the moment. But the m is nothing to do with the x. So I'm going to subtract the m from both sides. And that will give me t minus m equals x over h. And then x over h means it's basically x divided by h. So to get x, I'm going to multiply both sides by h. And if I multiply both sides by h, I get h times t minus m equals x. And you don't have to expand that back. It didn't ask us to. If you did expand it, well done. But that was fine to get all the marks. 15, expand and simplify. It looks easy, but the big problem is the leading negative before the second bracket. The first bracket, we've got 3 lots of 4m, 12m, minus 3 lots of 3t, minus 9t. Then you've got to subtract 2 times m, so you've got minus 2m. But then the next, lots of you put minus 4t, but you actually need to be doing minus 2 multiplied by minus 2t, which is plus 4t. That comes from this negative here, be multiplied by this negative here. That gives a positive plus 4t. And that simplifies to 10m, 12m minus 2m. And then we've got minus 9t plus 4t, which is minus 5t. And that's our final simplified answer. Can't do anything more with that. B, this is expanding double brackets. So you might, various different ways you may have been taught this, but basically everything in this bracket needs to be multiplied by everything in this bracket. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do y multiplied by y. This is y squared. Then I'm going to do y multiplied by -3. This is minus 3y. So that means I've multiplied the y in the first bracket by everything in the second bracket. Now I'm going to multiply the 10 by everything. So I'm going to do 10 multiplied by y, plus 10y. Then I'm going to do 10 multiplied by -3. This is minus 30. And then I just need to simplify, as I was asked to do. So you get y squared minus 3y plus 10y is plus 7y. I'm going to subtract 30. Y squared plus 7y. So subtract 30 is our final answer. 16. Two similar triangles. And we're told that the smaller triangle is placed on top of the larger triangle, and we've got to work out the bit of the larger triangle that can still be seen, which is a shaded bit. So the first thing we've got to work out is for similar triangles, what's the scale factor? What do you have to multiply this by to get this? And to work that out, you can do the new length divided by the original length. So the new length is 9, the original corresponding length is 12. So scale factor must be 9 divided by 12, which is 3/4. That's what I'm multiplying by. So in order to find this length here, call it x, we need to do 10 multiplied by 3/4, which is 7.5. So that means what we've got on our triangle, when we've got a triangle on top of each other, is we've got 10 all the way up here. But we've got 7.5 just for this little bit. Then we've got all the way along the bottom is 12. But then just the bit of the smaller triangle is just 9. So we've got to work out what can still be seen, and what can still be seen is big area minus small area. So area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2, or half base times height. So the big triangle, the base is 12, the height is 10, so we're going to do 12 times 10, then we're going to divide that by 2. And the smaller triangle, the base is 9, the height is 7.5. I'm going to tie them together, and we're going to divide by 2. And if you do that, work out those two answers, you end up with 60 centimeters squared is the area of the larger triangle, and 23.75 centimeters squared is the area of the smaller triangle. So that means subtract them from each other, 33.75, sorry, actually. Sorry about that. So then subtract them from each other, you get 26.25 centimeters squared. Percentages question, working out a percentage reduction, and to find percentage change, which is an increase or reduction, we need to find the actual change in pounds or weight, whatever the question might be in, divided by what it was originally in pounds in this case, and then multiply that by 100. So the actual change, it started at 480 and it went down to 310. So the actual change is 480 minus 310, and the original price was 480. And if we times that answer by 100, and if we do that, you should get 35%. 18, now is when you should be writing SOHCAHTOA. 18, you've got an angle in the side, and you want to find the other side. So because it's a right angle triangle involving angles, using trigonometry. So look at the angle we got, 72. Look at how the sides involved in the question relate to that. x is the opposite, 13 is the hypotenuse. So therefore, we're going to use sine. And what that tells us is that sine of the angle, 72 in this case, equals opposite over hypotenuse, which is x over 13. So sine 72 equals x divided by 13, 13 sine 72 must equal x, and you can just put that into your calculator, which means x is 12.4 centimeters. '19 was a very difficult question. Lots of people got this one wrong. We're told that to get from one term to another, you subtract k and then multiply by 3. That means to get from 15 to 24, we subtracted k and then multiplied by, subtracted k, sorry, and then multiplied by 3. So what that means is if we started off with 15, subtracted k, and then we multiplied by 3, I'm ended up with 24. So we've got to work out what k must be. Well, first of all, what number must we have multiplied by 3? Well, that must have been 24 divided by 3, which is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So that means 15 subtract k must be 8. So that means k must be 7. Because 8 add k equals 15. So now we know that k is 7. That means our first term, let's call it x. We subtracted k from it, so we subtracted 7 from it. Then we multiplied it by 3. And we ended up with 15. So again, we're going to work backwards to work out what x must have been. So the number we multiplied by 3 that must be 5. And then what did we subtract 7 from? We must have subtracted 7 from 12. So x must equal 12. The first term is 12. Right, 20 factorizing questions, which means we want to put them into brackets. So the first one, there is no constant term. It's not a quadratic equation with a constant term. So therefore, you want to take out a common factor and put it into one bracket. So, but in order to factorize it completely, you must take out all common factors. So first of all, we look at what's common between 15 and 20. 5. And then we look at what goes into c and c squared. C. So that's going to go outside the bracket. And then 5c multiplied by what gives 15c? 3. And 5c multiplied by negative 4c gives negative 20c squared. So that is it factorized. B is a quadratic equation, quadratic expression, sorry. So that's going to be done in 2 brackets. We get x squared. So I'm going to put an x there, an x there. And then the 2 numbers that go to the right of both brackets, they are going to multiply together to give 6 and add together to give negative 7. What 2 numbers multiply together to give 6 and add together to give negative 7? Must be 2 negatives. It's the only way you can add together to get a negative and multiply together to give a positive. So, and it's minus 6 and minus 1. Minus 6 times minus 1 is plus 6. And minus 6 subtract 1 is minus 7. C is against a quadratic expression, but there's no x term. There's an x squared and a constant term. So we're going to do 2 brackets. There's actually a special name for this, which is different to 2 squares. What we've got to do here, come up with 2 numbers that multiply together to give negative 16, but add together to give nothing. And that is plus 4 and negative 4. '21, upper and lower bound question, penultimate question in the paper. So we're told that the measurements are being rounded to nearest centimetre. So the length of 16 could be rounded to nearest centimetre. We know that the length could be greater than 15 and a half, greater than or equal to 15 and a half, because anything greater than or equal to 15 and a half will round up to 16. And it must be less than 16 and a half. Also, we're putting 16.4 down, but then what would 16.45 round to? It's still round to 16. So even though it's technically 16.49 recurring, we use 16.5 as the upper bound, but in our inequalities, we acknowledge that we know it can't actually equal 16.5. It can equal anything less than that. And then for the width, similar idea, the lower bound is 8.5, and the upper bound is 9.5. But we know that it can't actually equal 9.5. So for the area, lower bound for the area is going to be the lower bound for the length times by the lower bound for the width. So that's 15.5 times 8.5, which is 131.75. Whilst the upper bound for the area is going to be upper length multiplied by upper width. So 16.5 multiplied by 9.5 is 156.75. And then we're asked to give our answers as inequalities. And again, we have to acknowledge that we know it can't actually equal the upper bound. It can be anything less than that. So our area is an inequality. Must be greater than or equal to 131.75, the lower bound, and less than 156.75. Centimetres squared technically, but didn't need the units to get the marks on this. 22, 64 to negative half. You had a calculator, which is why you need your working for 2 marks. You couldn't just go straight to your calculator here. 64 to negative a half, whenever you see negative fractions, think of reciprocals. So 64 to negative a half must equal 1 over 64 to the half, and that's the same for any negative indice. 64 squared to the power minus 2 will be 1 over 64 squared. 64 to negative a half is 1 over 64 to the half. And when you've got a half as a power, that means square root the number. So it's 1 over the square root of 64, which is 1 over 8. And you're fine to leave it as a fraction. Somebody put it as decimal, but it was fine to leave it as a fraction. And that is the whole test done. Hope you've found this useful.